Hey, I want to show you a really easy technique that you can use with your storytelling that you're using in your marketing, whether that's to in a VSL or a video or just the beginning of a live, something like that. But basically, we all know how important story is and how story is really a vehicle of transmission. But I want to show you a really cool technique, again, that is going to absolutely make your stories that much more tantalizing, okay? So let me go to some slides here, because like with any story, so much is how you begin. And again, I'm just going to show you one technique here that you can use when it comes to storytelling, right? So this is from one of my courses, and I'm talking about a lot of different story starters, but we're just talking about one today. So that technique is the beginning and ending technique. I know, not a very fancy name, but the beginning and ending technique. So basically what happens is you are beginning your story with the beginning and the ending together. So you'll see what I mean. It looks a little bit like this. If there's a formula, it all began with something odd or curious thing or a place, and then ended with either some kind of shocking result or something that again makes you curious. So let me give you an example of this and how this works, okay? It all began with a napkin in a dive bar and ended with a knock on my door from the FBI. So if I was starting that story with you and I said that, right? Hey, it all began with a napkin in a dive bar and ended with a knock on my door from the FBI. Right away, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, what happened? What's happening here? And let me tell you why this works. Because the brain wants to connect the dots, but in this case it can't, and it makes it curious. And when the brain is curious, it begins to direct resources to pay attention, right? So in other words, we opened a massive loop here with this beginning and ending technique. Now, we've got a napkin in a dive bar, so that's not something that you would expect. At the same time, it's very visual. And then the FBI knocking on your door, that's not a good thing, or is it? Who knows? But we want to know. So again, that's a very, very strong hook to a story, right? And again, why this works is the brain wants to know, how did we go from here to the FBI knocking on our door? Let's give you a couple more examples. All right, beginning and ending technique. It all began with a DM in my inbox and ended with me booking a first-class ticket to Hawaii. So, I mean, that's not as high drama as the FBI knocking on your door, but it's still loaded with curiosity, because we all can understand, a DM in my inbox. Even better if you put it like Facebook or something more specific. It all began with a DM in my Facebook inbox and ended with me booking a first-class ticket to Hawaii. And so we're like, what happened? Did you close a sale? Did something happen? Did you win a sweepstakes? We want to know, because our brain needs to close this loop and connect the dots. It all began with a simple drive to Starbucks and ended with me sobbing on the phone to my mom. Now think about this. Again, we're doing the beginning and ending technique. Now this could just be that the story originally was somebody saying like, I drove to Starbucks and I was on the phone with my mom, and then she asked me this question, Sarah, are you really happy? And it was like at that moment that I began to realize, like, wait a minute, I'm not happy. I hate my job. And then, I'm sobbing on the phone to my mom. Well, she could be telling the story like that, but that doesn't grab you in the same way as if you said, hey, it all began with a simple drive to Starbucks and ended with me sobbing on the phone to my mom. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to go back in time, say, yeah, so here's what was happening. One day, I da-da-da-da-da. So it's really a primer for the stories that you tell. Another example, it all began with an odd-shaped oak coffee table that I picked up at a garage sale and ended with the business idea that changed my life. What does an odd-shaped oak coffee table that I got at a garage sale, very visual, what does that have to do with a business idea that changed your life? I want to know. All right, so that's how it works. So this beginning and ending technique, now you wouldn't use this all the time. You don't use this with every story. In fact, if you're doing a VSL or a webinar or something like that, and it's more of a signature story where you are going to present something really important, right? Or you're going to shift a major belief, or you are going to present your unique mechanism and how you discovered it, something like that, then you may want to use this technique. But you don't just use it for a story that is not going to pack a ton of punch, right? Because in any presentation that we give, there's major stories and minor stories, kind of big plots, subplots, right? And there's a lot of stories that we're teaching, but there's usually one core story that we're talking about. And again, so much of it, we want to grab people's attention. It's harder to do that these days. And a little technique like that can make all the difference. All right, go ahead and try that. Actually, what I would love for you to do is in the comments in this video, just try it out. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a real story, but just try out the technique, or think of a story that you already tell and see if you can then frame it in the beginning and ending technique at the beginning. And so go ahead and write that in the comments, just like the examples I gave you here, okay? And I'll definitely comment on them, but go ahead and do that. All right, see ya.